everybody. I'm going to be making a reproduction of this chest in 1/12 scale of a William and Mary blanket chest from the American colonies. And it was dated on the inside, I believe, 1735. And I'll give you a little background about William and Mary. William came to the English throne from the House of Orange, and he encouraged many Dutch artisans to follow him. And you can see the influence of the Dutch, especially the Pennsylvania Dutch, and the painting on the front of this. He also encouraged the Huguenot refugees from France, who were cabinet makers and designers and became shop owners in London at that time, to also follow him. And their influence was very strongly felt under William. And I think that the Americas took this at that time, the colonists, and we had our own craftsmen, and they made this style their own. And you can see the influence of the Pennsylvania Dutch in the painting on this chest. So that's the background, and I think it's a beautiful piece of furniture. And these things are very rare because once, if they were passed down often, again, they would get into the Victorian period or the Empire period first, which we might call the Regency period, the early 1800s, and they would begin to change these things, modernize them to their own taste, maybe strip off the paint off the front, or add trims, or cut legs off and put other legs on, that kind of thing. Especially the Victorians were fond of varying colors that, they had new paints and they had a more ornate taste. So, and people wanted modern things then, just like they do now. So I guess you could expect that. So there aren't that many of these types of chests around. These blanket chests were used for storing wool and linens, if you were wealthy enough, silk. And, it would keep the things wrinkle-free if they were folded properly. They would stack them on top of one another. You've heard of clothes presses. This is sort of a kind of press in a way where you pile the stuff up and they remain folded, and the wrinkles come out of them a little bit. And also you could put herbs in there and potpourris of certain types to keep the insects away or help keep them away, and the vermin. So they were used for storage, and it wasn't just clothes that were stored in them. Obviously they would store what they wanted, but that was the main purpose for them being built. And this one has a chest on top and no false drawers. And then there's a drawer beneath. Of course, in my case, it's going to be a false drawer because it won't open. So a lot of these chests were originally made to look like a chest of drawers, and they were more vertical. And maybe the first 2 or 3 drawers were just drawer faces. They wouldn't open. It would actually open from the top, and then they'd have one real drawer underneath on the bottom. So that's where we are with our little history. And I'm just using balsa wood, and this is 1/8 inch thick balsa wood. And I'm cutting out the back and the front, and I just have to make sure that they're exactly the same, just like I did the 2 sides. So this one will actually have a false drawer on the bottom. It'll add up to be a false drawer, but I am going to make this chest so that it can open from the top. I'll have hinges, but you'll see how I make those later. Colonial America had its own style, and we developed it here for practical reasons and based on the materials that we had. And Of course, there was strong influence from England and from Scotland, from France, Germany, the Netherlands. But we did have our own style. We really did develop that. And these blanket chests really show that. But they are rare, as I've mentioned. The Amish where I live, and I live near an Amish community, and I have Amish friends, they have blanket chests that are similar to these. There's some differences. I guess theirs is built on the Deacon Adams blanket chest. I think his name was Jacob Adams. He was an Amishman early on, and back in the 18th century. So they use them still, and they build them. And they're Pennsylvania Dutch. They speak, their language is very closely connected to both German and Dutch. And they don't even have a written language, by the way. They have to read their Bible in German. And so they have to learn German, and then they learn their Amish language, and they learn English. So they speak 3 languages, typically. So, but anyway, they still make blanket chests. Beautiful workmanship. They use local oak here. So now I'm just going to paint these with these glass beads that are going to be the onion feet. And I'll put 1 coat on each. And let them dry, and then that'll give them some tooth so I can paint them. And I'm going to cut out, for the legs, a little piece of hardwood dowel. And I'll cut 4 of them, exactly the same size. And these will be glued on top. And then they'll be glued onto the bottom of the chest after I put the bottom of the chest on. I'm just using my little miter with my Japanese saw. It cuts pretty quickly. Although I do have this film speeded up quite a bit, so. And I just need 1 more. And I'll just glue those on with wood glue. I'll put a good dollop on it in the middle. And I'll center them and let them dry. And I'm just running a brush along the outside of the dowel. A little bit of glue kind of escapes. I just want to clean it up. A lot of people would resort to using a glue gun at this point, but I find glue guns to be, unless for very specific purposes, to make a mess. So you'll rarely see me use one. Now I'm going to make the teardrop poles, and the only way I could figure out how to do this was to take a glass head pin, small one, and dip it in some triple thick a couple of times, and then let it run down the shaft of the pin. And once it dried and hardened, then I took a chrome marker and put the first coat on, and then let that dry. Chrome marker takes quite a while to dry. So I put 3 or 4 coats on each one, and I made 4 of them because I didn't want to, if I lost one or something, or I wrecked it in bending it. Right, there's another one that's just been dipped. And I didn't paint it, and I'll show you how. I'm just going to put marker on it. And I just stuck them in this piece of wood, balsa wood, to cure. I'm just going to put the chrome marker on, gold chrome. There. So when it's on the dresser, it looks pretty convincing, I think. And I bend it right at the shaft before it starts to taper into that teardrop. And then there's another one. Just want to make sure I have enough of them. These tiny things, sometimes you'll knock something over and they'll go flying somewhere and then you never find it again. So I just made a couple extra, and I can use them for something else too. And I used pins to put this together instead of clamps because I find that the balsa wood's too weak. And the pinholes, I use thin enough pins that when I paint it, it fills it in. You'll never see the pinholes. However, if you use stain, probably shouldn't use pins because the holes will actually be accentuated with stain. But I don't use stains with solvents in them, very rarely in a closed space. My studio area here is too closed of a space. I don't want to inhale those fumes. So I use acrylic paints, water-based oils, waxes and stuff like the Waverly wax is actually water-based and can mix with acrylic paints and acts like a stain without being a solvent-based stain. So it doesn't have a weird smell, won't make you sick. Okay, now I have to let that dry. And I put the bottom on, which was pretty straightforward. And here's the top. The top is going to be cut a little bigger. I want it to overlap on the sides and the front. Here's the other pieces for the drawer and the front. I have 2 jewelry findings and some pieces of brass that I cut out. That's for the keyhole, and the other 2 circles will go behind the jewelry findings. And the teardrop poles will be pushed through those findings with a little round brass back so that you can't see through it. And I just took a pair of pliers and just bent it. You see how I bent it. And just needle nose pliers. And later on you'll see how I put them in. Now I'm just going to go around and sand the rough edges. And this is 600 grit sandpaper. I use the finer grit sandpaper on balsa wood. It doesn't make the wood ragged. So I just want to sand that down pretty well. Okay, there's the legs are glued on. And now I have to paint this after I put this little trim on. Now this trim I used actually to trim my 1930s dollhouse. And this is actually chair rail. And I had to cut a piece of it off because it had too much of a rounded edge, but you didn't see me cut that off. I actually made it so it looked a little more like the kind of trim that would have been put on this box. And I'm just going to cut the sides and the front with my miter. And this is wood trim, but it has a coating of white paint on it. Pretty thick coating, but it is wood. And it is some kind of a hardwood, but I don't know what it is. So this is a kind of skirting that goes around the whole bottom. And I noticed that many of the drawers, the chest of drawers, the blanket chests of this period had this kind of skirting, which Queen Anne furniture didn't, I don't see it as much in that style. And it kind of drops off to the Empire style of furniture later on completely. I mean, you just don't see it. Or maybe they, who knows? At least I haven't seen it. I'm using super glue, though, to attach this because that coating of white, the super glue will stick to that a little bit better. It's not at all porous, so I just wanted to make sure that it really stays on there. So I'm using the Ultra Control Gel super glue. And I have to cut that as one piece at an angle and meet the other angle. And I glued that other piece on. Now I have to do the other side. I ended up having to fill with wood filler these mitered corners because they just didn't meet quite the way that I wanted them to. So I put wood filler in and it looked fine, and I sanded it a little bit. You won't see me do that here. It was just Minwax filler. I'm just trimming it, make sure I get it the right size. And I'll just glue it on again with the super glue. I've only been buying this Ultra Control Gel super glue. The other stuff, it's too runny, and I just don't care for the fact that you don't have, when you put it down, it just spreads. So it does have its uses, though. There it is, and then I'll have to put the wood filler in on the corners there. And that has a sort of skirt on it, just like the original. Now I'm going to start painting it, and I'm going to use burnt umber, and it will be black, just a little bit of black in the burnt umber for the first coat. It needs to be darker than the typical burnt umber for the background. So I'll just put a coating on that on the base of the chest and on the inside and the bottom. And that little skirting piece will be painted the same color as the top of the chest opening part, but that comes a little bit later. These really had a functional purpose, but like a lot of period furniture like this, they had functional furniture, but they liked it to be decorative. So they would paint it and paint motifs on it and make it look a little nicer and homier. The Queen Anne style was also something you saw in this period. It came after the William and Mary, I believe Queen Anne took the throne in 1714, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was 1714. And there was a style that developed there too that I'm sure many of you are familiar with. So I'll probably have some Queen Anne style furniture in this log home too, a piece or two, along with the more rustic stuff. So I'm just painting the bottom and the feet. They'll all be the same color. I like to use these I buy these little salad cup things, empty ones with the lids on them. So if I have extra paint, I can put the lid on and I don't have to try to put it back in the bottle, or especially if I have a mixed paint, I can keep it for some other project. Okay, I painted that, the lid, and the skirt will be painted the same color, but I'll talk about that in a minute. There's the handles. Just wanted you to see what they look like. Those are the teardrop handles I made. And the color that I used for the top, the lid, had too much ochre in it, and I ended up having to paint it again. But that's the bottom and that's the top. They were more of a mocha color, a light mocha or darker beige. So I'm going to use territorial beige this time, and I'm going to mix it with some Mod Podge matte finish to thin it out, and go over it again. And I'll do that molding around the bottom as well, the skirting. My light, I have a little bit of an orange tint to the light. It's not tungsten lighting, but I have a orange light because it's supposed to be better for your sleep at night. So it does change the colors though. So you don't, that's the unfortunate thing about it, is you don't get a daylight light effect. And so what this does is it tends to make everything look redder and oranger than it really is. So just to let you know. Okay, I just gave that a quick first coat. And I also took a blonde pencil, Inktense pencil, to draw a line to accentuate the drawer on the bottom. Now this is dry, I'm going to give it a quick sand. Again, using 600 grit sandpaper. I don't get real aggressive with this. I'm more like buffing it. And I'll give this a once over too. The chest. I end up sanding it quite a few times. It does need to be pretty smooth in the front. And there's a sort of blonde colored pencil that I use to accentuate the drawer. So that bottom piece is supposed to be a drawer. And the top part would have been where the blankets are. I nicked that a little more than I wanted to, so I guess I'm going to have to paint that a bit. I don't mind a few nicks, but I didn't want that big one. It was a little too distracting. Now I'm using an Inktense pencil in mauve. This is a very dark mauve. Obviously, I would almost call it a deep violet. But I want to add some of those tones into this wood. So I'm just going over it very quickly and putting the lines in so that it goes along with the wood grain and around the edges. I'll make sure I have a nice sharp point. This will give some texture and depth to the wood. And I noted that there were these tones in the wood, the original one from the photograph, so I wanted to pick that up. And this is a dark brown pencil. I think it's a burnt umber pencil, and I don't remember the name of it. I didn't look at it. But I think it's burnt umber. So I'm just going in and going over the mauve, and just where I put the mauve, and adding this to it. And I'm going over the top with the mauve and with the burnt umber as well.
Nope.
Just going to sand it to blend it in. And there it is. This is the image I'm going to reproduce now. I'll begin doing that. This is chrome yellow. And I'm going to be putting in all those Pennsylvania Dutch influences and motifs. When people voted for doing basically a settler home, I think they thought I was going to be making Little House on the Prairie stuff. I noticed that my viewership has really dropped since I started doing this log home with the colonial theme. And I don't know if it's because people don't like it or they're unfamiliar with it. Now, I love Little House on the Prairie, and I love that prairie style. I really, truly do. But one of the posters said, "I hope you don't do that. It's overdone." And, they were right. So I took their advice. And although this was voted for, basically, I went with the colonial log home, a settler's log home in the early part, the mid part of the 18th century. That was not easy for me to say. So maybe this isn't very popular with people. It is my favorite time period, though. Colonial America. I'm going to see this project through right to the end. So even if I lose more than half of my followers, it's okay. It's okay because I'm not here to just get followers or to be monetized or any of that. I'm here because it gives me a reason to do this. And I just want to share it. That's all. It's just that simple. And I like meeting new people. I've speeded it up quite a bit because this took hours to do. And I want to put most of it in there, but I don't want you to sit through that. I also used a kind of orange. I think it's tangerine orange in there, along with that plain red. Well, there it is. That's the original. And here's mine. I did try to copy the colors and the forms as closely as I could. And now I'm just going to put some 1 part wax, 1 part water, and 1 part burnt sienna on top of this thing. I'm going to actually cover the whole thing with it and wipe it off. And this will take some of that shine off of it, and it will also tone it down a little bit. That's the Waverly wax I used. It's water soluble. And then just wipe it off. Just putting some more on that again. It just looked like it needed it. And I wiped it off. Okay. Now I need to put the hardware on it and the hinges. Now the hinges are just chipboard, very thin, the thinnest chipboard you can buy, and I'm painting it with matte black acrylic paint on both sides. It's still pretty heavy paper, but it's not real stiff. And I'll let that dry. These are strap hinges, and they're meant to look like, ironwork. I just glued them on with super glue, and now I'm going to put a little piece of fingernail art on there that looks like it's faceted, so it'll look like a hammered hinge nail or screw, and then I'll paint that as well. I do put them on the inside too afterwards, but I didn't record that. I thought it was kind of self-explanatory that I would do that. And then these get bent in a certain way so that they act like a real hinge. It's not just one bend, it's actually a couple different bends when I have to press it really hard. There's the keyhole piece that's on the brass. I'm going to glue that in. And I do have to push that in pretty hard because it has to look like it's a keyhole. And I do cut it right in the center. So it has it does have a hole in it. But I do that with an X-Acto knife and I don't know what you call that thing. Somebody told me what it was once. It's a polymer clay tool. It comes to a point on the end. And anyway, I've never used it for polymer clay. But I seem to be using it a lot in furniture making here. I'm just going to go around that, open that keyhole up a bit more, push it in, the X-Acto knife. There's the keyhole. I'll probably ink it a little more. Gotta get it in there better. Spread that glue in there. Just needed a dot. And now I'm going to glue on the teardrop handles, and I'm just pushing the pins right through. Just line them up and gluing them. Make sure they stay put. I put the glue on the back of the brass this time. I will be cutting those pins out of there so that they'll be flush with the wood since I glued everything, so they'll stay. And now I'm going to glue the hinges on after I paint these little, what look like bolts. Yeah, I cut them out. So nobody will get injured if they put their hand in there. Now, I had folded them, and I used a bookbinding tool, but you didn't see it. And they're folded like a kind of L hinge, and then I glued them in, and now I'm just kind of poking them down so that they stick down in there. Because this thing has to close flat, and unless you do it the right way, it won't. And there it is. It's finished. And it opens. And you can put things in it if one wanted to. And there's the original again. And there's that. I ended up putting a little magnet in it, and you couldn't see it. The magnet, I don't have it there, but you'll see a picture. Okay, well, that was a fun project. You can see the little dot up at the top is a pinhead that I painted, and there's a little magnet just above that circle in the middle where the keyhole is. So when you shut it, it just closes tight. Well, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll stick with me because this is going to be a long journey. Bye-bye.